The Psychology of Decision Making. Level C1. Advance. Every day, you make decisions that shape your life, even when you don't notice them. You decide what to eat, what to ignore, what to click, what to believe, who to trust, when to speak, when to stay silent, how hard to work, how much to rest. Some decisions feel small, but small decisions repeated over years become destiny. That is why decision-making is one of the most important human skills, and also one of the most misunderstood. Many people imagine decisions as rational calculations. They think we look at facts, compare options, and choose the best one. Sometimes we do that, especially with simple problems. But most of the time, our decisions are shaped by psychology, emotions, habits, biases, social pressure, and the limits of attention. We don't just choose, we react. We don't just think, we feel, and then we call that feeling logic. To understand decision-making, we need to accept a difficult truth. The brain was not designed to make perfect choices. It was designed to survive. Survival does not require perfect reasoning. It requires fast enough reasoning. In the past, if you hesitated too long, you could die. So the brain built shortcuts. These shortcuts are useful, but they also create mistakes in the modern world, where many problems are slow, complex, and abstract. A helpful model comes from psychologist Daniel Kahneman, who described two modes of thinking. One is fast, automatic, and emotional. The other is slow, deliberate, and analytical. The fast mode helps you drive, recognize faces, and respond quickly. The slow mode helps you solve math problems, plan, and evaluate. The problem is that the fast mode runs most of the time, and the slow mode is expensive. The slow mode needs energy and focus, so the brain uses it only when it feels a strong reason. This is why you can understand a good argument and still make a poor choice. In many moments, your emotional system decides first, and your rational system arrives later to write a story that makes the decision sound reasonable. This is not a sign that humans are stupid. It's a sign that the brain is a storyteller. It needs a coherent identity. It wants to feel consistent. So, it explains decisions after the fact. Emotions are not enemies of reason. In fact, you need emotion to decide at all. People with certain brain injuries can lose emotional signals, and they struggle to make even simple decisions. They can analyze options endlessly, but cannot choose. This shows that emotions provide value signals. They tell you what matters. Without emotions, life becomes a list of equally gray options. The real issue is not emotion versus reason. The issue is which emotions and whether you understand them. Fear can protect you, but it can also make you avoid opportunities. Desire can motivate you, but it can also trap you in short-term pleasure. Anger can push you to defend boundaries, but it can also make you resrushot relationships. Decision-making improves when you can notice your emotions without being fully controlled by them. One of the strongest forces in decision-making is loss aversion. Humans feel losses more strongly than gains. Losing $100 hurts more than gaining $100 feels good. This bias made sense for survival. Losing resources could mean danger. But in modern life, loss aversion can make people overly cautious. They avoid new careers, new relationships, and investments because they focus more on what they might lose than what they might gain. Loss aversion also explains why people keep bad situations longer than they should. They stay in a job they hate because leaving feels like losing security. They stay in a relationship that is unhealthy because ending it feels like losing years of effort. They keep a failing project because stopping feels like admitting loss. This is connected to another bias, the sunk cost fallacy. When you invest time, money, or emotion into something, you feel pressure to continue even when it no longer makes sense. The brain confuses past investment with future value. Another major psychological force is the availability bias. Your brain estimates reality based on what comes easily to mind. If you recently heard about a plane crash, you may feel flying is dangerous, even though driving is statistically riskier. If you watched a video about crime, you may feel the world is more violent than it is. The brain uses vivid examples as shortcuts for probability. This is efficient, but it can distort reality. This distortion becomes powerful in the era of social media because the internet feeds you vivid extreme events. It shows drama, conflict, and fear because those things capture attention. Over time, your internal picture of the world can become darker or more dramatic than reality. That changes your decisions. You may become more anxious, more defensive, and less open to new experiences. In that sense, attention shapes decision-making by shaping perceived reality. Social pressure is another huge factor. Humans evolved in groups. Being rejected by the group used to be dangerous, so the brain developed a strong sensitivity to social approval. This is why people often follow norms even when they privately disagree. This is why many people copy what others do in uncertain situations. Psychologists call this social proof. If many people are doing something, the brain assumes it is safe or correct. Social proof can be helpful. It saves time and reduces risk, but it also creates herd behavior. It can create bubbles, panics, and massive mistakes. In markets, people buy because others buy. In politics, people support ideas because they feel popular. In personal life, people choose careers because they look prestigious, not because they match their values. The fear of being wrong alone can be stronger than the desire to be right. Another important concept is framing. The way a choice is presented changes how people respond. If a doctor says a treatment has a 90% survival rate, many people feel optimistic. If the doctor says it has a 10% death rate, many people feel fear, even though the information is identical. The brain reacts emotionally to wording and context. This is why advertising and politics focus so much on framing. It is also why you should be careful when you feel suddenly convinced by a message. You may be reacting to framing, not facts. Decision-making is also limited by cognitive load. When you are tired, stressed, hungry, or overwhelmed, your ability to think clearly declines. The brain looks for shortcuts. It chooses prowitchnia. It avoids effort. This is why many bad decisions happen at night, after conflict, or after long workdays. It's not because you suddenly became a different person. It's because your mental resources were depleted. This explains a phenomenon called decision fatigue. After many decisions, the brain becomes tired of choosing. It begins to choose the easiest option: avoid, delay, or follow impulse. This is why some people can make good decisions in the morning and then make worse decisions later. It's also why systems like routines can be powerful. When you turn repeated choices into habits, you reduce decision load. You save your mental energy for decisions that truly matter. Now, let's look at identity, because identity is one of the deepest drivers of decisions. People don't only choose what seems beneficial, they choose what fits the story they tell about themselves. If you see yourself as a disciplined person, you choose actions that support discipline. If you see yourself as unlucky, you may choose in ways that confirm that belief. End quote. If you see yourself as not a math person, you avoid tasks that could prove otherwise. Identity can be freeing when it supports growth. It can also become a cage. Many people are not trapped by external limits, but by internal narratives. I'm not that type of person. I always fail. I can't change. These narratives become self-fulfilling. The brain prefers consistency over improvement, so it chooses actions that keep the identity stable, even when that identity causes pain. This is one reason why changing behavior is hard. You are not only changing actions, you are challenging the story of who you are. And the brain resists that because it feels like danger. But once identity shifts, change becomes easier. A person who begins to see themselves as someone who keeps promises makes different choices almost automatically. A good place to start is intuition. People often argue about intuition versus analysis, as if one is good and the other is bad. In reality, intuition is compressed experience. Your brain learns patterns and stores them quietly. When you face a similar situation later, you get a gut feeling. Sometimes that feeling is wise. Sometimes it is a false alarm. Intuition works best in environments where feedback is clear and regular. For example, a chess player can develop strong intuition because they see many games and outcomes. A doctor can develop intuition because they see patterns in symptoms and test results. A designer can develop intuition because they train their eye and get feedback from reality. But intuition can fail in environments that are noisy or random, where cause and effect are unclear. Investing, relationships, or politics can produce intuitions that are really just emotions or recent memories. This is why one of the best decision skills is knowing when to trust intuition and when to slow down. If the decision is familiar and you have strong experience, intuition can be efficient. If the decision is new, high stakes, or emotionally loaded, slowing down is usually smart. Emotional intensity is a warning sign. When a choice makes you feel rushed, ashamed, or desperate, your fast system is probably in control. That doesn't mean the choice is wrong. It means you should check it carefully. Now let's talk about procrastination, because procrastination is not really about laziness. Procrastination is often emotional avoidance. You delay a task not because you don't understand its value, but because the task triggers discomfort. It might trigger fear of failure, fear of judgment, boredom, confusion, or the feeling of being trapped. The brain prefers short-term relief over long-term benefit. So it chooses a smaller, easier action: scrolling, cleaning, organizing, or researching because those actions reduce discomfort immediately. In that sense, procrastination is a decision. It is a choice for emotional comfort now, paid for with stress later. The problem is that the brain discounts the future. It treats the future as less real. This is called temporal discounting. A reward today feels stronger than a bigger reward next month. That is why people struggle with savings, exercise, and learning languages. The benefits are real, but they are delayed. The costs are immediate. So how do you fight procrastination? Not by screaming at yourself. You fight it by reducing emotional friction and making the first step smaller. Your brain needs a clear entry point. If a task feels like a mountain, you won't start. If the task feels like one step, you can begin. Once you begin, the brain often becomes calmer because uncertainty decreases. Action reduces anxiety more than thinking does. Another deep factor in decision-making is the environment. Many people believe their decisions are mostly internal, but in reality, the environment is a silent decision-maker. Your surroundings shape what you notice, what is easy, and what is tempting. If unhealthy food is on the table, you eat it more. If your phone is on your desk, you check it more. If your guitar is in the corner, you play it more. If your running shoes are visible, you run more. These are not moral issues. They are behavioral physics. This is why willpower is overrated. Willpower matters, but it is fragile. A better strategy is to design environments where the good choice is the default choice. Put friction in front of bad habits. Put ease in front of good habits. That is how you make better decisions. Feel natural rather than heroic. The same principle works socially. The people around you shape your choices. If your friends live in constant drama, your nervous system gets trained for drama. If your friends build projects, your brain begins to expect growth. This is not a judgment. It's a reality of social influence. Humans synchronize. We imitate. We absorb norms. So choosing your environment includes choosing your people. Now let's talk about a very common trap: overthinking. Some people procrastinate by doing nothing. Others procrastinate by thinking too much. They analyze endlessly because analysis feels safe. If you stay in planning, you avoid the risk of making the wrong choice. But the cost is that life stays on hold. Overthinking often comes from a fear of regret. People want a guarantee. They want certainty. But many important decisions do not offer certainty. Career choices, creative projects, relationships, moving to a new country, these decisions are not math problems. They are experiments. The best you can do is choose based on values, information, and probability, then adjust later. Trying to eliminate uncertainty can become a prison. A practical solution is to separate decisions into categories. Some decisions are reversible. If you choose the wrong restaurant, you can recover. If you choose the wrong book, you can stop reading. If you choose a software tool, you can change later. For reversible decisions, speed is usually better than perfection. Other decisions are harder to reverse: choosing a long-term partner, taking a big loan, signing a strict contract. For these, slowing down matters. The problem is that many people treat small decisions like they are permanent and treat big decisions like they are small. They worry for weeks about minor choices and rush major ones due to emotion or pressure. Better decision-making means matching the amount of thinking to the level of consequence. Now, let's look at a tool that strong decision-makers often use without naming it: pre-commitment. Pre-commitment means you make a decision now that protects your future self. You design constraints that stop you from making a predictable bad choice later. For example, you remove junk food from your home so you can't eat it at night. You schedule a workout with a friend so skipping becomes socially costly. You set a deadline with a public promise. You put money into savings automatically so you don't have to decide to save each month. Pre-commitment is not punishment. It is self-respect. It is admitting, my future self will be tempted, so I will help them. Another powerful tool is reframing. Remember how framing changes decisions? You can use that effect for yourself. If you need motivation, don't frame a task as pain. End quote. Frame it as identity. This is what I do. Or frame it as a tiny experiment. I'm just testing this for 10 minutes. Or frame it as loss avoidance. If I don't act, I lose progress. Or frame it as a future gift. This makes tomorrow easier. The brain responds to stories. You can choose stories that support action rather than paralysis. Reducing options is also underrated. Too many options can freeze the brain. This is called choice overload. It's why people spend 40 minutes choosing a movie and then feel tired. It's why many learners never start because they keep searching for the best course. When you limit options, you create clarity. You can say, I will choose one option and commit for 30 days. That rule alone removes endless second-guessing. Now let's discuss regret, because regret is the shadow behind many decisions. People fear choosing wrong because they imagine future regret as unbearable. But regret is not only about the decision. It is also about the story you tell yourself later. Some people treat regret like proof of failure. Others treat it like data. A healthy approach is to expect some regret. Regret is part of life. Every choice closes doors. Even good choices have costs. The goal is not to eliminate regret. The goal is to choose in a way you can respect later. That means choosing intentionally, not by panic. If you choose with clear values and reasonable information, you can say later, I did the best I could with what I knew. That reduces toxic regret. This connects to values. When decisions are difficult, values are a compass. Without values, you will follow the loudest emotion or the strongest social pressure. With values, you can accept trade-offs. Values don't make decisions easy, but they make them cleaner. They reduce внутренний conflict because you know why you chose. Now, to make all of this practical, imagine a simple decision system, not a complicated method, but a small routine you can repeat. First, define the decision clearly. Many people suffer because they don't know what they are deciding. They mix choices together. For example, should I change my job? Might actually contain multiple questions: money, stress, identity, future growth, and fear. If you separate them, you reduce confusion. Second, ask what matters most. Choose 2 or 3 criteria: health, learning, stability, relationships, Creative meaning, time freedom, not 10 criteria. Too many criteria creates noise. Third, check your emotional state. Are you hungry, tired, angry, or anxious? If yes, delay high-stakes decisions. A calm brain makes better choices. 1. Fourth, decide and commit to a review date. This is important. Many decisions are experiments. So you can say, I will try this for 6 weeks, then I will review. That reduces fear because you are not trapping yourself forever. Finally, design the environment so the decision becomes real. If you chose to learn, schedule it. If you chose to save, automate it. If you chose to change your health, remove friction. Decisions without implementation are just wishes. The bigger message of decision psychology is this: you don't need to be perfectly rational. You need to be consistently strategic. Small improvements in decision systems create huge results over time. You won't eliminate biases, emotions, or social pressure, but you can reduce their power. You can build habits that protect your attention. You can choose environments that support your values. And you can treat life as a series of experiments rather than one irreversible test. In the end, good decision-making is not about always choosing the best option. It's about choosing options that move you toward the person you want to become, then adjusting as you learn. That is how psychology becomes not just a topic, but a tool.